Okay, so do them to everybody so everybody can hear what or see what you're asking, and that way they might have the same question as you. So just address them to everybody. That way, Kate's sure that she's addressing it, and we're sure that it's getting to everybody. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. And I am going to come over to the machine here. I'm trying to figure out how to best do this. If you guys want to see my ugly mug, or if you want to just look at the sewing machine. It is a lot of lecture today. So we're going to talk a lot about the sewing machine, and we're going to tear apart the sewing machine probably more than you guys have ever done before. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to accomplish today, or try to accomplish today. If you guys thought you were going to be able to leave the meeting and go open your own repair shop, that's sort of not where we're headed. So again, my goal with this class is to give you pointers and tips on how to best keep your machine out of the repair shop. So we're gonna talk about, I think the more knowledge you have on how a sewing machine operates, how the upper shaft actually correlates to the lower shaft, how a stitch is formed. We're going to talk a lot about how a stitch is formed. Also, another main part of the class, it shows you how sad my life is. But over the years, I've sort of become an expert on needles and needle choices. And so you're going to hear me lecture a lot on needles today. We've got a whole section of this that we talk about the different types of needles and things of that nature. So again, it's not a really technical class. However, saying that, I sort of start the class backwards. The first part of the class is going to be the only technical part of the class. So I don't want to scare anybody off, but I think it's really important that everybody knows when you bring your machine in for service, that I'm going to actually turn it where you guys can see what I'm saying here. So again, you're able to, if you bring your machine in for service and somebody tells you that it's out of time, I think it's really, really important that you know what timing is, so you can be informed and ask the right questions and know exactly what they're talking about. So again, the first thing that we're going to talk about is hook to needle timing. In order to do that, it's really important that you know a couple of important things. First of all, we're going to talk about what the hook is. So normally this is a hands-on class too, so this is kind of weird for me. I'm not having the machines all here and you guys all taking them apart with me, but that's the first part of the class we're going to do, is we're going to take apart the bottom portion of your machine. And I brought two machines here because I know a lot of you have the Solaris or the Luminaire equivalent, or we've got a variety of different machines here. So I'm going to show you how to take apart the bottom portion of your machine. And on both, I'm working on a Unity, which has the old style bobbin system. And we're going to switch back here so I can show you guys that. It has and then I'm going to also show you on the Solaris, which is a much easier process to get in and look at your machine. So again, first part of the class, we're going to tear the bottom portion of our machine apart. By the way, I think Kate mentioned this, but for those of us who joined us late, I do have a handout on the website. It looks like this. So it's got 3 pages to it. And again, this is actually one of my favorite classes to teach. It was the first class that I taught. I've been teaching it for 26 years now. I sort of adapted this handout over the years. So we've got 3 little parts to it that will, if you wanted to print them out and follow along, they are on the website under the events tab, today's date, and you can print them out. So saying that, let's move along, and we're going to tear the bottom portion of the machine apart. Now, can they see this pretty well, Kate?
Yep.
with the, okay. So again, on the old style machines, you actually have a cover that actually snaps off really, really easy. It's got a little L shape to it. Again, we're referring to the Babylock and Brother machines. So for those of you who have a different style of machine, you have to know how to be able to tear your needle plate apart. Again, if you're not doing anything else to your machine on a routine maintenance basis, this you have to know how to do. So on the Babylock, we're going to just pull this gray cover off really nice and easy. I've got a super handy dandy tool that I use, and it's called a quarter, because it helps me get into, again, most machines will have some type of a tool that they gave with your machine to make it easier to get your needle plate off. But I'm going to go ahead and just loosen. There's 2 screws on here, and I'm going to just go ahead and take both of those screws off. And that makes our needle plate free. And then the reason I'm laughing, I'll have to show you, is we're working with Kate's machine, and Kate's machines are awesome when it comes to cleaning. So, and then your bobbin case will come out also. Okay. So again, that took me all of about 35 seconds to do. So if you're not doing anything else, we've got a whole section on routine maintenance I'm going to cover here in just a little bit. But if you're not doing anything else to your machine, I want you to get comfortable doing at least this. Okay. Now, 90% of you, when you guys have drop-in bobbin systems like this, where the bobbin is actually, you can see it from the top, those machines are oil-free. Okay. But just because they're oil-free does not mean that they're clean-free. And I want to show you why. So, because again, can they see that pretty good, Kate?
It's a little too close.
A little too close. Yeah. Yeah, I bet it is. So yes, she does use her machine a lot. So again, if you're using your machine a lot, what I'm getting at is that lint and debris can get in there very rapidly and accumulate very rapidly. And again, I've got a whole section we're going to do on routine maintenance. So I'm going to stay focused on our hook to needle timing here. Okay. So again, it's really important in order to understand hook to needle timing that we understand a couple of key points. One of them is what the hook is. That's a pretty key element there. So we're going to point out to you what your actual hook is on this machine. And again, this is going to be for most drop-in systems. You're going to have the same style hook, whether you have a Viking, whether you have a Pfaff, whether you have a Brother, even the Berninas have gone to a drop-in bobbin system. So, so the hook is actually this little, as you turn your hand wheel, and anytime you turn your hand wheel, I want you to turn it towards you in a sewing direction. And we're going to turn that hand wheel towards us, and you're going to be able to see that hook moving it around in a circle there. Okay. And the hook, the part that I'm talking about that we're going to focus on is the little tip point. And Kate, can they see that pretty okay? Mm-hmm. So there's a tip point to this hook here that we're going to pay attention to. So again, that's the hook that we're referring to as I tell you. That's what I want you to pay attention to as we're doing this hook to needle timing. Okay, so everybody's got what the hook is. At least I hope you do. The next part is how a stitch is formed. Okay, so, and before we get into how a stitch is formed, I'm going to actually talk about needles a little bit here. So no matter what type of needle that you're using, and I'm going to flip this phone around again here. No matter what type of needle you're using, it's going to have the same components to it, whether it's a jeans needle, whether it's a stretch needle, a quilting needle, an embroidery needle. They're made of different materials. They're made of different um, uh, have some different components to them, but they all have the same characteristics. The first characteristic is what we call the first part of the needle is what we call the shank. Okay. And the shank, as you can see, has a flat side to it. So you got a round side and then you've got a flat side. And are they able to see that pretty okay? Okay. So if you go down the flat side, you're going to actually see the most important part of our needle, at least in the stitch forming process. And that's actually what they call the scarf cutout. Okay. The scarf cutout is this little groove opening on the bottom of your needle. And it's a really deep groove towards the eye of the needle. And then you've got the third part, of course, which is the eye or the tip of the needle. Okay, so we've got the shank, which has the flat side to it. If you go down that flat side, you're going to see the scarf. And then, of course, it goes to the eye or the tip. Okay, so those are the main components to a needle. So now that we know how a needle is formed, now we can talk about how that interacts in the stitch forming process. Okay, so, and again, whether you're doing your most elaborate decorative stitch or a regular straight stitch, every stitch is formed the same way. What happens is, and there will be a quiz on this, but there's no way to do a quiz on the Zoom, huh? That's a bummer. I'm going to just quiz Kate.
Oh, great.
Yeah, that's right. So she better get it right.
You guys should be paying attention.
Exactly. So the way a stitch is formed, and again, whether this is with your regular straight stitch, the most elaborate decorative stitch that you have, embroidery, whatever, every stitch is formed the same way. What happens is your needle is actually going to go down through your fabric. Okay. The fabric, in turn, its job is to put pressure on the thread and push it up against the side of the needle. Okay. As that's happening, the hook is actually moving in a circle down below, as we saw. Okay. And then you've got this wonderful part on the top of your machine. And again, I'm going to flip you back. I hope I'm not making anybody seasick out there. But the other part of this is what we call our take-up lever. And Kate, they can see that too, right? Okay. Right on the inside here is what you have.
Pointer, please.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. That's a good idea. Is that what that was?
Yes.
I was wondering, she handed me the screwdriver. So here's my pointer. So again, this is actually going to be our take-up lever. Okay, so now we've got this stitch forming process down to an art here. So I'm going to switch it back to me. And again, back to the stitch forming process. Again, no matter what kind of stitch we're doing, your needle's going to go down through your fabric. The fabric, in turn, is putting pressure on that thread and pushing it up against the side of the needle. Okay, the hook, in the meantime, is coming around. It's going to pick up that fabric or pick up that thread. Okay, it's going to pull it around. It's going to match it up with our bobbin thread. And then that take-up lever is going to snap up to form our knot. Okay, so again, that's how every single stitch is formed. So here's your quiz, Kate. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
The hook goes around.
Wrong answer. But so in your now educated opinion, what do you think the purpose of the scarf cutout is in the stitch forming process? What do you think?
I'm going to let Annette Anthony answer that question.
So I'll go ahead and answer it for you.
Okay, that's a really good idea.
All right. So the scarf cutout, its whole purpose in the stitch forming process is to give a place for the thread to lie as that fabric is putting pressure on the thread and pushing it up against the side of the needle. The fabric, or excuse me, the needle needs a place for the thread to lie so the hook can come around and pick it up cleanly and pull it around and match it up with the bobbin thread.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I knew that. I knew it was right on the tip of your tongue. So again, that's the purpose of the scarf cutout. So, and the reason I tell you all that is that's what hook to needle timing is. Okay, it's where the hook is meeting up with your needle in that stitch forming process. Okay, so again, we're going to switch back one more time, and I'm going to show you hook to needle timing and what it looks like in actual motion here. So we've got our, I'm going to see if I can get this super close here. So we've got our hook that's spinning around in a circle here.
The dirty hook.
It is a dirty hook, and we're going to talk about that in just a second here. But you can see the hook is now coming around. I don't know if hopefully you guys can see that. And the hook is coming around, and now it's going to meet up with our needle. And when you're in center needle position straight stitch, that hook needs to be directly in the middle of your scarf cutout. Okay, that would be perfect hook to needle timing. Okay, so again, that is, I'm hoping you guys can see that. Our hook is good, is passing our needle, and it's passing it right in the middle of our scarf cutout. Okay, so again, if you bring your machine into a repair shop and they tell you that your machine is out of time, that's exactly what they're referring to. Okay, so it's again, it's the one timing system in our machine that sort of interrelates with all the other timing systems. It's also the one that we can visually see nice and easy. So again, your hook to needle timing is where your hook meets up with your needle. When you're in center needle position straight stitch, it needs to meet up in the middle of that scarf cutout. Okay, so hopefully everybody's good with that. I lost my monitor for a second. So yeah, Rosemary, that's a really good question. What would cause it to go out of time is trauma. And what I mean by trauma is if you broke a needle, or if you actually, what happens is the machine needle will stop very suddenly. That hook is actually spinning twice as fast as your needle bar is moving up and down. It makes 2 rotations every time the needle moves up and down one time. So you see how fast your needle bar is moving? Your hook is actually spinning twice that speed, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. And again, if that needle stops very suddenly, what can happen is that hook can continue to move a little bit. So that's going to be what the main cause of hook to needle timing, what would cause the hook to needle timing to go out.
So we have a couple of questions,
Sure.
Patrick. One of them was, can we adjust the timing, or is it something that is a maintenance repair?
I was just about to say that very same thing here.
Okay.
So, okay.
And what does it look like when your machine's out of time?
Okay.
And could a thread nest cause it to go out of time?
A thread nest could cause it to go out of time if it's a really, really bad thread nest. Okay. Normally, it takes a lot for your machine to go out of time. It really does. So it needs to be like a broken needle, or I mean, not needs to be, but that's the 90% of the cause would be sewing with a needle too long, something of that nature. If you get a really bad threads nest that actually, again, jams your machine and causes that needle to stop very suddenly, that can also throw your timing out. So yes, to answer your question, if now that I've taught you guys how to check your hook to needle timing, if you're sewing along at 2 in the morning and all of a sudden you break a needle, and then all of a sudden you're skipping stitches and you can't figure out why, and you check your hook to needle timing and you realize that the timing is not where it needs to be, then the rest of this class is going to mean nothing to you. Okay, it's time to stop sewing. You're going to need to take it into a repair shop and get everything taken care of for you. Okay. However, if you check your hook to needle timing and you see that everything is like it should be, that the hook is meeting up with the needle in the middle of the scarf cutout, then the rest of this class is going to mean a ton to you, because now we can start to analyze exactly what might be going on with our machine, the external factors that might be leading to our problems. And that's what the rest of this class is going to focus on. So if you check your hook to needle timing, you realize that everything is good, then we can start to look at some external things that might be causing our problems that we can adjust or alleviate all on our own, simply by looking at a few fun things. So, and that's what we're going to focus on from here on out.
Okay. Is there anybody else that is getting a distorted voice volume? No? Can I get some thumbs up if everything seems okay? Okay.
Sound is good.
Yeah,
Good.
it might be your end, Lorraine. So I'm sorry if that is happening.
Try to turn your computer volume down. Hopefully that'll be
She's
good.
traveling right now in an RV.
Oh,
so
I see.
That might be,
That might be doing it. We don't feel very sorry for you then, Lorraine.
Can you just show them that timing one more time?
Of course. Yep. So, so here again, that timing, when we turn our hand wheel, again, that hand wheel is coming around, or the hook is coming around. And again, you can see our needle is moving up and down at the same time. So if you look, our hook is now coming around, and you can see it, it's going to go behind our needle as that needle's coming up, and it's going to meet that needle right in the middle of that scarf cutout that I was telling you guys about on your needle. Okay. And then of course our take up lever is going to snap up, and it's going to form our knot to form our stitch. You can see the thread. I don't actually have that threaded. I can show you. Maybe you can see it a little better if I have it threaded. Hold on just a second here, and let's get that. Oh, that's funny. Might not be able to use my needle threader. Hold on.
Could use your eyes.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. That didn't work either. Is your needle threader working?
It is working.
There we go. All right, so let's take that all back off again. And so now hopefully you can see as the hook comes around, again, let me move that a little bit closer for you. The hook is coming around, and you can see how it's going to meet behind in the scarf cutout, and it actually picks up that thread and it pulls it around to meet it up with our bobbin. Okay, so, and then again, the take up lever will snap up to form your knot. Okay, hopefully they saw that okay.
I think so. It went a little blurry. It goes blurry when you try and get too close.
Oh, does it? Oh, shoot. Okay. Okay, so so again, that's hook to needle timing. And again, I don't want that to scare you. The rest of the class, again, is going to be more about troubleshooting and routine maintenance, and again, how to keep your machine out of the repair shop. I want to emphasize this one more time. If you are sewing along at 2 a.m, and again, all of a sudden you start skipping stitches, and you check your hook to needle timing, and you realize maybe your hook is coming around and it's meeting your needle way up high, or the needle has moved all the way up out of the fabric before the hook gets around there. That's an indicator that your hook to needle timing is out. And again, the rest of this class is going to mean nothing to you. So you're going to have to stop sewing. It's time to put it away and bring it into a repair shop in order to get that corrected. Okay. However, if you see that everything looks good, again, the rest of the class is then going to have a ton of meaning to you, because we can start investigating some different things like needle choice, like again, the routine maintenance I'm about to try to correct some of those problems for you. Okay, so let's move on to that, because we're going to talk about routine maintenance now. Linda Wilkie has her hand up. Kate, did you see that?
No, I did not see that.
So, and again, if you guys have any questions, make sure that you bring them up in the chat room, and we'll try to get to as many of those as possible. Again, this is the first time I've ever done maintenance on a Zoom or on a virtual thing, so this is kind of a new experience for me. So hopefully I'm covering it and you guys can all see what I'm doing. So let's now talk about routine maintenance. Again, I was telling you, most people have machines nowadays that are oil free. Okay, anybody who has a drop-in system like this, where the bobbin is, you can actually see your bobbin on the top of your machine, that is an oil-free machine. Okay, just because it's oil-free does not mean it's clean-free. Okay, so that's a really, really important thing. You have to know that. You still have to keep your machine clean to make sure that it's working at peak performance. Okay, there is several different ways of cleaning your machine. Kate, you want to take notes?
You are not funny.
I forgot about the lint brush.
How do you recommend if they drop a bobbin, not a bobbin, drop a screw into the bobbin area? How do you recommend they get it out? Okay,
so screws in the bobbin area are a pain. So I will say that, because they can sort of, you can see there's a lot going on down in the hook area. This, by the way, is what I like to call the heart of your machine. This is where everything is sort of happening. So we got our feed dogs, we got our hook, we've got bobbin light indicators here. So the when you start running low on bobbin thread, it'll tell you. All of that is down into this area. Okay, so hopefully the screw doesn't drop down too far. Okay, again, I am one who is a firm believer that I sort of teach, for lack of a better word, I teach aggressively, meaning that I don't think you should be afraid of your sewing machines. Okay, I think you need to be in control of your sewing machine rather than your sewing machine being in control of you. So, but again, certain people have a tolerance that they're not willing to cross. Okay, so in order to really, if your screw drops all the way down below this hook area, below this top area, the only way to really visually see that is to actually take your side cover off, and then to take the front cover off, which is a screw here, and then a little clamp screw over the side. I don't actually get into that because it's really intimidating to most people. So, but again, if you wanted to get into there, you can. It does not hurt your machine to take it, turn it upside down, and shake it a little bit. Exactly. So don't be afraid to do that. You're not going to hurt anything by doing that. So again, that's what I would recommend. If you don't want to take those two covers off, I would recommend just turning it upside down and try to shake it loose. I have a lot of people who bring these machines into us who have dropped screws in them and can't find them. So it is a pretty common.
We have a few people admitting that they may have done that.
So it is a pretty common thing to happen, and it gets lost in oblivion there.
What about a magnetic screwdriver?
A magnetic screwdriver would work great. Yes. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here too on the magnet side.
You, Jen. She said 40 pounds. I mean, I
tell me exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, you're right. That's very true. So let's get back to the routine maintenance part of the cleaning process here. So again, there's several ways that you can keep your machines cleaned, and we're going to talk about a lot of those today. Okay, the most economical way is that wonderful little lint brush that I can't seem to find here. But again, that comes with your machine. It is, again, the lint attracts, or the lint brush attracts the lint, and it's really easy and good way to clean your machine. I am more of an instant gratification kind of guy. So that's way too tedious for me, and it's way too, it's just way too slow. So, and again, you will hear me teach things today that you're probably haven't heard before, or you've been told never to do before. But again, I think the more knowledge you have, the more comfortable you should be. I've been in this industry and doing this for about 26 years now. And the next thing we're going to talk about is the canned air. So, and again, I know a lot of people teach not to ever use canned air on your machine. I'm one who teaches that you can use canned air if you know how to use it. And what I mean by that is, if you're one of these people who likes to clean your machine every year and a half to 2 years, then you're right. The canned air is probably not your best alternative. Okay. But if you're doing it like I'm telling you to, where you're cleaning your machine, and I haven't even told you this, but I'm going to tell you now, you should be cleaning your machine, tearing it apart, just like we did here, taking your needle plate off, taking your bobbin case out and cleaning it out. You should be doing that about every 30 to 50 hours of sew time. That's actual time that you have on the foot control. About every 30 to 50 hours, I want you to go through a deep cleaning process like this. Okay.
So would you recommend, or you're going to show them some other alternatives, but would you recommend like a dusting brush before they use canned air to get the bulk of it out?
Yeah, you can use a combination of these two. That's for sure. That's not a problem at all. Yes, so a dusting brush or a cosmetic brush or something like that works really, really well.
And Lisa, good to see that you're on here, Lisa. Lisa said that her friend uses a mini vacuum, but she can't imagine doing this. Well, guess what?
We're going to show you how.
Yeah,
and I've got the perfect machine for that too. So let's talk a little bit about the canned air real quick and how to use it. Okay, so again, the canned air is actually made for computers. So it's a perfect way to clean computerized sewing machines also. So the canned air, a couple of downsides to it. First of all, canned air, I'm going to switch this back to me again. Okay, so canned air is basically condensed air, which is condensation, which is water, which doesn't mix with electronics. Okay, that's one of the dangers of canned air. Okay, however, the nice thing is water is actually heavier than air, believe it or not. So all the water actually settles on the bottom of the can. Okay, if you don't turn your can upside down, then you never have to worry about that water affecting your machine. So you can see I turned my can upside down, and hopefully you can see this when I first spray it out. Did you see there's a little, I don't know if you could see that on camera. See it. Could you? Mm-hmm. Okay. There's condensation that came out of the tip of that canned air. Okay. So again, you can avoid that by simply not turning the can upside down. Okay. So the other part of it is the canned air strong enough to clean our machine thoroughly. Okay. Again, if you're doing this every 30 hours, then yes, it's plenty strong enough to get that all that debris out away from the gear mechanisms, out away from that hook area. So it's a really, really convenient and easy way. Again, I know this sounds like a racket. They put 10 ounces of air in a can and sell it for $12.99 or whatever the price is. But it is a very effective way of cleaning your sewing machine. When you're cleaning your machine, switching around again, when you're cleaning your machine, I want you guys to clean it from back to front. Again, when you do that, can they see? Yeah. Sort of. So when you do that, and you're going to see, I hope it doesn't fog up the camera. All of that debris, it gets blown out away from your gear mechanisms, but you can see just a couple of little squirts, and my entire feed dog area is completely clean there. Okay, so again, it works really, really well by going back to front, and you can get that clean very, very quickly. Okay, so again, way number one is our canned air process. I think that's a really effective way. I like it a lot to clean your machines out.
Jan is asking about the canned air pushing the dust into the rest of the machine.
And that, thank you, Jan. That's another, again, another thing, a valid question. And it's more true when you don't clean your machine as often. I can't emphasize that enough. Again, if you're one of these who cleans your machine every year and a half, or you have a ton of debris, say you've been sewing on fleece or something that's materializing a lot of lint in this area, then that's correct. That canned air might not be strong enough in order to get that cleaned. That's why we're cleaning from the back of the machine to the front of the machine, okay? Because our gear mechanisms are actually towards this back, the feed dogs and back of the feed dog area. So we're actually blowing that debris towards the front of the machine. Also, in your opening, you've got a lot of space towards the front of that opening where it's okay to have that lint build up a little bit, okay? Because we've got a lot of space, a lot of clearance on the front side of this opening.
They can't see where you're pointing.
Oh, they can't, okay. So yeah, you've got a lot of space on the front side of the opening here, not so much space because all your gear mechanisms are towards the back side of the opening, okay? So I hope that answered your question a little bit. I don't have any worries as long as you're bringing your machine in for a maintenance check into your local dealer or into us, whoever you might be bringing it to, every year to 2 years. We're going to be able to open this all up and get that all cleared out for you, and you're not going to have to worry about it. Okay. So, so the canned air, again, work back of the machine to the front of the machine. Do it frequently. Do it every 30 to 50 hours of sew time, and you should have no problem using the canned air and keeping your machine nice and clean. Okay. So next thing that we're going to talk about are the new and awesome way to clean machines. I've got this contraption here I need to show you guys. Two things. First of all of the products that we're talking about, of course, are on our standard 20% off for the class. I do have them on the website. They're under the Facebook Live products today, and they're all listed at that 20% off price. I'm going to go ahead and switch this back again so you guys can see me. But we've got a really super cool vacuum that I want to talk to you guys about. This is called the Gem. It's the Ricard Gem. It's only like $39, so it's a really, really inexpensive vacuum. It comes with a lot of really cool. So you're getting the next part on how to clean your machine, and that's by using a little vacuum or even your big vacuum, your big full-size cleaner. The Gem actually has a whole bunch of these really cool little attachments. It's great for doing cars. It's great for, it's got a little crevice tool here with a little dust brush on the end of it. It's got another little dusting brush here. So again, it's got a lot of really nice little attachments too. However, if you combine the Gem with our mini vacuum attachments, which I've taken some of them out of here, it's got 5 different wands and they look like little dental instruments. So again, it's just a really nice, easy way to clean small crevices, like in your computer, in your sewing machine. It is a perfect way to actually clean your sewing machine. Uh-oh. All right, we good? Sorry, I was getting a call coming through there and that wasn't good. Okay, so back to, again, the mini vacuum attachments. I've actually, this is the end of the hose for the Ricard Gem, and this is the adapter piece for the mini vacuum attachments. The mini vacuum attachments will fit on 98% of all vacuums out there. Okay, so whether you have an upright, a canister, whatever, the mini vacuum attachments are awesome, and they only run like $18.95. The Ricard Gem runs, we have it on sale right now, $39.99. So it's only about a $40 purchase for the little mini vacuum. But again, if you're interested in a quick, easy way of keeping your machine clean, this is going to be noisy, but I want you to watch my hand. This vacuum is so powerful when you turn it on. You can't even keep your hand straight because it actually torques your hand a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on. And you guys get the point. So that is going to be our little vacuum attachment. And again, the mini vacuum attachments will fit on any vacuum, but this is a great way for you guys to keep your machines cleaned. It also doesn't blow that debris. It doesn't blow that dust all over your sewing room where you have to go back and clean it up anyway. So again, just an awesome way to keep that keep the machine cleaned. Okay. So also air will not hurt your machine. Okay. So at the stores, we might have it overkill, but we have our air compressor turned up to about 125 pounds. So, which is again a little bit of overkill, but again, I told you I'm an instant gratification kind of guy. And when we put 125 pounds of air pressure against the lint in your machine, the air compressor wins every time. I know that's not very convenient. Normally the air compressor is in your garage, and you don't normally sew in your garage. So, but again, it is a very effective way of keeping your machine cleaned. If you want to use an air compressor, don't be afraid to use the air compressor. Okay.
How much room is in the little dust collection for that?
Oh yeah, that little, it's got a.
And apparently Zoom has an automatic, so you completely lost volume.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it has some type of automatic background noise filter on it.
Oh, that's cool. Well, it's not cool, but so let's go ahead to the dust compartment to this. I'm going to move this over here. It just, if I remember how to work this. Okay. Oh, there it is. It's just a tiny little guy here. Can they see that?
Yeah.
And it'll trap all that debris in there again. And all you do is it's a shakeout little bag. So it's not very big. But this is more for smaller jobs. So, and it just fits in here and traps all that debris in here. And then it's just a shakeout tile type of bag.
Is the white hose part of the attachment package?
It's a part of the mini vacuum attachments.
Okay.
Yes, it comes with the hose. It comes with 5 different little mini attachments.
And can you just show them again without turning the vacuum on? We're just going to pretend the vacuum is on so that they know where to clean in.
Yes, and again,
and go over the pricing again, please.
Okay. Also show you some of the different attachments here. I'm a mess. So again, this one has a little brush end on it. Okay. But again, it's got a whole bunch of neat little, this one, for instance, is a tiny little crevice tool. And it just fits in to the hose part here. So again, the little crevice tool is even going to be nice because you don't have the brushes getting in your way. And you can just go in there. And again, you're going to just clean all of your debris out using the little crevice tool or the little dental instrument tools.
And can you clean that clear hose part out? Can you like rinse it out and then let it air dry?
You know, as long as you're not picking up water or moisture, you shouldn't have to worry about that. I would not recommend, because it's going to be really hard for you to get it dry.
Okay.
So I would not recommend like cleaning it.
And
But
there really isn't any filters on that little vacuum, right? We can just kind of clean those out. No replaceable filters.
There's one small little replaceable filter on there. Yes, but it's just a little carbon filter.
Okay.
And it's really easy.
And then can you just go over how they can order, because a couple of people are asking whether they have to call the store.
Yes, you can call the store if you'd like to. You can also make a comment on the meeting here, and we'll get one put aside for you. Or I do have them on the website. It's under the Facebook Live products. So you can actually order anything that we're talking about today is already on there with the 20% discount. Again, normally the vacuum sells for $59.99. We have it on sale for $39.99. The vacuum attachments are $18.95. We have those on sale. I think it's like $13. So again, it's a really easy, fast way to keep and it's probably my favorite way to keep your machines clean.
And that adapter is not available separately, correct? You have to buy. That's
correct. You have to buy the entire.
You have to buy the complete set, Roseanne, but it's only about a $10 to $15.
Yeah, that's for the mini vacuum attachments. And that adapter makes sure that it works on all different types of vacuums. So if you have a Eureka at home, you don't want to buy the little gem, you can actually use this mini vacuum attachment set on the vacuum that you already have at home. So
Okay, and then can you just go over the cost of shipping for anything on the website?
shipping, yeah, that's a good question. Can you tell them?
So the shipping is graduated depending on how much you spend. So it goes anywhere from $0 to $12.50.
Good way to answer that, Kate.
Yeah, I don't have the
I think $0 to $25 is $3.50.
25 to 100.
100 is $7.50. 100 to 150 is
no
100 to 200 is $12.50,
and then
over 200 is free. Yes. Okay. All right. So saying all that, again, we've gone over the cleaning methods of your machine. Okay. I also want to talk about some things to avoid when you're cleaning. Okay. There are certain parts in your machine that belong in the machine, and some people get overzealous if you're using a little tweezers or anything. And one of those, can they see this little?
Hold it still, they might be.
Can you guys see there's a little fuzzy
Here's your pointer.
Oh, thank you. There's a little fuzzy felt piece here that belongs in your machine. You can see it has some thread stuck to it. But again, a lot of people will get in there with tweezers and think that this is lint and try to dig it out. Okay, you have to be careful of that. Anytime there's a cutting mechanism, you have a felt piece on there that's going to buffer the thread as it comes across the knife. So you need to make sure you leave that alone. Okay. The other part that you need to leave alone is the felt piece on your bobbin case here. Okay. So again, the bobbin case has that same felt piece. That's a sort of a buffer for the cutting mechanism. And you want to make sure that you don't pull that off of the bobbin case. Okay. While I'm talking about the bobbin case, this is another important part of routine maintenance. The bobbin case, unfortunately, on most of these machines is plastic. Okay. So when you have a plastic bobbin case, your needles are actually way tougher than you think that they are. And if your needle makes contact with the bobbin case, that needle is going to win every time. So when you're cleaning your machine, I also want you to pay attention to your bobbin case and make sure you don't have any marks, any needle penetration marks on this bobbin case. Okay. If you happen to have some, you want to make sure that you just take your finger and you sort of file those down with your fingernail. Okay. So, because again, if you have any burrs on there, what will happen is the thread will come along and catch on those. And again, that can cause shredding thread problems and things like that. So if you look at your bobbin case every time you clean it, and you just make sure that you don't have any puncture marks on there. If you do have puncture marks, just take your finger and rub them out on both the top and the bottom of that bobbin case to make sure that no thread is going to catch on those.
So if they've lost the fuzzy felt piece, should they be bringing it in to get it replaced?
Yes, you should. Your cutter is going to have huge problems if you happen to. It shouldn't be. You're lucky if your cutter's working. So and you'll probably miss more cuts than you should if you don't have those felt pieces. So yes, I would recommend getting that felt replaced. Again, if the marks in your needle or on your bobbin case get too plentiful, I recommend getting the bobbin case replaced also. Keep in mind, Babylock owners, when you have the gold standard or when you have the love of the 4-year unlimited service policy, these parts are all included in that first 4 years. So you bring it in as many times as you need. If you think you need a new bobbin case, we carry these in bulk and we'll make sure we get a new bobbin case for you. Or if you need a new felt, again, most of the time we just replace when we lose the felt. It depends on how bad the bobbin case is, but we can put a new felt on there for you, or we can give you a new bobbin case. Okay. Okay, so let's Let me make sure we are doing well here. I think so. So we've talked about the bobbin case and paying attention to it. The next thing I want to talk about is probably the most ignored part of a sewing machine. And again, it can cause a lot of problems for you if you don't pay attention to it. And that's our needle plate. Okay. And again, anytime I pull a needle plate off of the store machines, okay, can they see the needle plate where those burr marks are?
Tilt it a little bit backwards. There, now they can.
Now they can.
Mhm.
Okay, so again, now I'm not giving you permission to go out and use your husband's power sander or anything else. But if you pay attention to your needle plate, there are some things that you can catch that if you catch them early enough, that are really, really easy for you. That are really, really easy. I'm sorry, I'm paying attention to questions, and then I'm losing my train of thought because I can't do two things at once.
You're a guy.
That's right. So again, when we pull our needle plates off, and I want you guys to get really, really comfortable pulling your needle plates off because it's an important, extremely important part of routine maintenance. So saying that, when we pull those needle plates off, I want you to take some time and pay attention to them. Okay, because again, I've told you this before, your needle is really tough. If it makes contact with your bobbin case or with your needle plate, unfortunately, the needle tends to win that battle. Okay, so now I'm never in a million years going to try to teach you guys how to sew. I think most of you have seen my sewing prowess, and it's not the best. So, but I am throughout today going to give you a couple of pointers to make your lives a little bit easier. And one of those pointers is, I'm going to switch it back to me here. One of those pointers is, again, you guys all invested a lot of money on your sewing machines. So you need to let them do their job. Okay. So if you guys are trying to force feed your fabric through, if you are trying to help the machine, if you're trying to help the machine feed that fabric instead of letting it do its job, there's no way on earth you can tell when the needle is down in the fabric and when it's up out of the fabric. So as you're pushing that fabric along, you can do so when that needle is down in the fabric, and you're going to bend that needle ever so slightly. You're not even going to know you're doing it, but eventually that needle is going to bend so much that it's going to make contact with our needle plate. Okay. So again, if you let the machine do the feeding, and you can see this is one of our floor model machines, and we've got a couple of really significant burrs on there. I don't know if you can see those. I mean, they're not significant, but if we catch these early enough, because it's going to happen eventually, when you sew enough, your needle is going to make contact with your needle plate, and it's going to leave a mark there. So if we catch them early enough.
Can you use your pointer and point to the burrs, please?
Oh, sure. That's funny. So the burrs are.
See, pull back. And then tilt it. There you go.
The burrs are, I can't see, are right on the front side of this needle plate. And you can actually see they're pretty pronounced on there. I'm hoping you can see that. So it's going to be right on the front side of the needle plate. You're going to see several little needle penetration marks. Okay. Again, I'm not giving you permission to go use the power sander on this. However, if you have an old emery board, or if you have some really lightweight sandpaper, we actually use a Dremel tool at the store. So where we actually will take that Dremel tool with a lightweight sandpaper, and we can file those down. Rather than buying a $39 needle plate, you can just keep filing these burrs down. As long as you catch them early enough, it's a very effective way of keeping that needle plate cleaned. But again, if you're not paying any attention to it, all of a sudden you get deep marks and you're not able to file them down, and you need a new needle plate. So again, just pay attention to your needle plates and make sure that you're keeping your eye on it. And if you catch those burr marks early enough, you can very, very easily take care of those problems. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the needle plate?
Just thank you for using the pointer.
I'm going to get used to my little pointer here. That's perfect. Okay, so we're going to go from the most ignored part of sewing.
So one quick comment there, which I can answer that for you. Absolutely, they pay attention to looking at your bobbin case and your needle plate when it comes in for annual maintenance. That's one of the things that they will take great time in looking at those.
Very much so, yes. Yep. So any other questions before we move on?
Maybe. Do you file on top or in the groove?
I was going to say the most important part of our, oh, I'm such an idiot.
What did you do?
I was trying to put the needle plate on that side of the camera,
and
thinking
the
that it was
facing you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, what you really want to focus on the burrs is right in the opening of the needle plate, and that's why I say that old emery board is a really, really good alternative for you. It tends to fit right into that opening, and you can again file on the inside. That's where those burrs can really affect your stitching. So if your thread catches on any part of those burrs, it's going to act as a saw. And it, again, if you get that shredded thread problem, if you get that broken thread problem really frequently, that is a really good place for you guys to look to see if you can see if there's a burr on there. Now, I will tell you, there is one part of the needle plate that has a little notch to it, that the notch belongs there. And that's going to be, as you're looking at your needle plate, it's going to be on the left-hand side. So I had to get to my left-hand side. So it's the left-hand side of your needle plate. You're going to see a little groove opening. Again, that's for the cutting mechanism. And you're going to be able to, you want to leave that alone because that belongs there. Okay.
Okay, so we got lots of questions here, Patrick.
Okay. It does look like an arrow, Lisa. Yes.
Okay. Patrick is going to show you how to put the bobbin case back in correctly. So I know a lot of you are asking that question. Patty Reed is asking about air in a USB, and I'm not sure what she's referring to on that. You might need to ask that question again, Patty. And then they're asking if we are supposed to be doing this every 30 hours of machine time. Is there a place on the machine that tells you how much time has lapsed?
No, and I want you to, I don't want you to lose your mind over this, but that's just a rule of thumb. So if it happens to be 50 hours, it's 50 hours. If you can't remember the last time that you cleaned your machine, it's probably time to clean it. So just, again, it's more of a rule of thumb. I don't want you to lose in sleep over, oh, how long have I been sewing or anything like that. So.
Oh, I think she's asking if you can plug it in through the USB opening on the machine.
Plug the.
Vacuum in, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. No, it's a standard connection on that vacuum. It is an electric connection.
Okay.
Okay.
And then
use air to clean the USB. You know what, Patty? That actually isn't a problem. You could certainly do that if you're having trouble. It's not part of routine maintenance. I wouldn't recommend doing that on a regular basis. But if you're having trouble with your USB connection where it's not working properly, sometimes debris does get in that USB opening and it will cause issues. Most of the time, I mean, I don't see that very often. So, but air would not hurt that. What are we doing?
When you're finished talking, I'll tell you.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
want to
Oh, sure, no problem. Okay, so yes, you can use canned air to clean out the USB ports on the side of your machine.
Oh, okay.
So over.
It's the camera's on the inside, Patrick.
I'm so confused. So over on the side, you can see the USB connections, and you can actually utilize that USB, or excuse me, the canned air to blow out those USB connections too, if you like.
Somebody said that she realizes that this is not a machine maintenance question, but could you show the difference between a high shank and a low shank?
Oh, of course.
I do not have a low shank here at the house, so you're going to have to just envision that.
Yeah. Okay. So high shank machines, and the two machines that we have here are, oops, sorry. It scared me too. So this is an example of a high shank foot adapter. Okay. So the low shank is going to look almost identical to this, except it's shorter. So it's actually only going to come to right about here. So again, the mid shank machine is what they call it, high shank, mid shank machine. Most of the newer Babylocks and brothers have gone to the mid shank style machine. Okay, the Elisa, I don't want to say that. The high end Babylocks, like the Unity, the Altair, the Solaris, the Destiny, all have gone to mid shank. They're entry line machines, all the way up to the Soprano, are a low shank machine. Okay, the only difference that really makes is if you want to put on a walking foot, or you wanted to put on a
ruffler.
A ruffler, exactly. You're gonna need to buy the right type of shank for your machine. Most of the mid shank machines have an adapter with it that will turn the mid shank into a low shank. So they do have an adapter that comes and rests on your needle bar here that will actually make that a little bit lower, so you can use some of those low shank feet, like the walking foot, like the ruffler, that type of thing on there. Okay, I hope that helped you, but that's what we're talking about with the mid shank versus low shank.
Okay, so we do have another question. She wants to know what the impact on the needle bend or the needle plate when free motion quilting with your feet dogs down, or when shifting a large quilt under the needle doing special stitches.
Yes. So, and that's where you're going to see those needle marks most. We get into a whole category of needles here that I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit, but your needle choice on free motion quilting is going to be almost imperative for you. So you want to make sure that you're choosing the right type of needle for free motion quilting. But again, free motion quilting is just what I was describing earlier, where you're in control of the fabric. So you have no idea when the needle is down in the fabric and when it's up out of the fabric. And as you're moving it along, you are going to bend the needle. It's going to be natural. So you just need to be cognizant of that, and make sure that you're changing your needle often. You want to make sure that you're using a quilting needle. And again, we're going to talk about those here in just a little bit.
Charlene is asking if the Alissimo is a low shank.
It is a low shank, yes. Yeah.
And then Lynn is stating that she uses a USB extender. Can you explain that to everybody, Patrick, so they understand what a USB extender is?
So
I don't have one here to show to you, but the USB extender is it's a USB plug that goes into the side of your machine, and then it's like on a little maybe just a 12-inch cord that will have another USB piece on that end. And what that is doing is every time you put your USB stick in and out, you are not putting it in and out of your machine. You're putting it directly out of the extender.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And what that does, that gives your USB port in your machine more life, because you just permanently keep one USB stick in there, basically. And you are you're putting the wear and tear on the extender as opposed to your port in your machine.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So
I didn't even know that existed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Missy Billingsley talks about those.
Oh, really? Well, see, you know what? I just learned something. I knew the reason I love these virtual classes.
I'm 11 messages behind. So
all right. So let's talk about, again, now that we've gone through the cleaning process, let's talk about oil a little bit, okay? Because again, now all of you have machines that don't need to be oiled. Not all of you. Some of you have machines that don't need to be oiled. If you have a Babylock or Brother machine that has that drop-in bobbin system to it, you do not have to oil your machines as part of routine maintenance. Okay. So when you bring it in for service, however, we do oil the machine. We actually oil the bearings. We oil, and I'm going to show you a bearing on your machine. It's more of a extended life. So if your machine, I was telling you that it tells you when it's time to come in for service. It'll start making noises. It'll start grinding on you a little bit. It might break threads more often than it has in the past. So that's usually an indicator that the machine is telling you it's time to come in for service. Okay. If you're in the middle of that project and you don't want to bring your machine in, there is a place that you can oil these machines. Again, I'm going to reemphasize, this is not part of routine maintenance.
So
okay.
If you are leaving us, I know there's a couple of you that are having to leave. If you are leaving us, this will be recorded. You will be emailed the recording so that you can watch it later. And we will see you all a little bit later this afternoon on live at 2 if you're having to leave us right now.
Okay, so down in the base of the machine, you do have a bearing. Oh, first of all, I want to talk about type of oil. I got ahead of myself. So when you're buying oil, okay, it's really, really important for all of your sewing machines. This is if you have a FOF at home, if you have a featherweight, if you have any machine that needs to be oiled. An Accomplish would be an example of a Babylock machine that needs to be oiled. You want to buy your oil in a clear container like this, okay? Oil does have a shelf life. So don't ask me why, but we sell it in this 4-ounce bottle. You can see it has this really cool long spout to it that actually goes in and out of the tube. So you can get into the nooks and crannies that you need to oil. But again, it needs to be a 5-weight sewing machine oil. If you have some of that oil in a tin can at home, if you're trying to use WD-40 or Triflow, those are not effective ways of oiling your machines if you have a machine. Also, if you have a serger, all sergers need to be oiled. Okay, so again, this oil is going to be really, really good, and you want to make sure that you buy it in a clear container. And when it starts to yellow, you want to just go ahead and throw it out and buy some new oil. Okay, and that's the reason we want it in the clear container, so you can see when that starts to happen. I'm going to show you how to oil on the sewing machine, and then I'm going to take you over and I'm going to show you how to oil on the serger. So on the sewing machine, this is only if it's starting to make noise and you want to make sure and you want to get through a project before you bring it in for service. You can see this little bearing on the inside here. I don't have my pointer, but hopefully this is working as a pointer. Just put a single drop of oil right on that bearing, and that's going to help your machine. That's the main bearing that's going to make that grinding sound. So if you're starting to hear that grinding sound, you put a couple of drops of oil on that, it works its way in there, and that grinding sound will stop for you. Okay, so if you have to oil your regular sewing machines, again, most of the time when you have a front load, instead of a top load, you have a front load bobbin in your machine. Those machines tend to need to be oiled. Okay, so a FOF, that 7500 series, that in fact, most of their machines up until the last 10 years have been a front load system that requires oil. Okay, and you're just going to put 1 drop of oil on the hook as you see it spinning around on the inside there. You're just going to put 1 or 2 drops of oil on that hook. If you have a machine that needs to be oiled, your cleaning needs to be moved up to every 10 hours because you're going to want to oil the machine or clean the machine every time that you oil it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Cleaning needs to be moved up to about every 10 hours because you're going to oil your machine about every 10 hours. That's actually 10 hours of sew time, of course. Okay, on to the serger. We're going to move over to our serger here.
Oh, that's not a good idea.
That's pretty funny. So actually, it doesn't look bad. Your sewing machine looked worse than this. Can they, how well can they see this, Kate? Are
You
they?
can see it pretty good if you can keep it still.
Okay, good. So you can see you've got a whole bunch of moving compartments here that are metal on metal. All sergers need to be oiled. Okay, there isn't a single serger on the market that you don't have to oil. Again, we do not want to oil a dirty machine. So it's going to be really important that you use your canned air or your vacuum attachments or whatever to clean all of this debris out before you actually put a drop of oil on there. Okay, but your oil spots on here, I'm going to turn it on so you guys can see a little bit. Is it plugged in? It's not plugged in. Bummer. Okay, so there's a bar on your upper looper that moves. Oh, good. Thank you. Yes, that's better. So there's a bar on your upper looper that moves up and down out of that looper that it needs a drop of oil on top of that bar there. Okay, you can see where my finger is right there. The other spots are down on the bearings, which are going to be on the lower looper right here. And then if you had a chain stitch looper, there's going to be a bearing on the chain stitch looper that you need to put a drop of oil on. So just the 2 or 3 spots on the serger is all you need. And again, you're going to want to make sure you clean the serger before you oil it. Okay, so that is going to be where to oil your serger. Any questions on that? Are we doing okay? Are we losing people? Are they getting bored?
Lost 2. You're using the same oil.
Same oil for sergers as sewing machines, yes.
And long arm?
And long arm, yes. So all of it is the same oil. And that, again, that's why that sewing machine, the 5-weight sewing machine oil, you do not want to be oiling with the tin cans. You don't want to be oiling with WD-40 or Triflow. Okay, those are too heavy and they're eventually going to gum up your hook and you're going to have more problems than you know what to deal with.
Susan R. has her hand up.
Hi, Susan R.
Do I need to unmute her?
No, she can type a question, or if you want to unmute her, you can. I'm having a hard time trying to find what?
To find where to put the oil on the Alliance.
On the Alliance. Yeah, the Alliance is going to be that drop-in hook system, okay? And the drop of oil, again, the hook actually, it's very similar to how this hook works, except this one is working in the top of the machine, where your Alliance is actually working in the front of the machine. And you're going to see that hook moving around in a circle, and it's spinning around on a race, okay? And you just want to put a drop of oil anywhere on that hook mechanism. So I know that, and if you want to, I don't know if you're local or not, but if you're local, you can come in and I'll show you exactly where to put the oil on that. But if you get it anywhere in that hook area, you're doing well, and you're gonna be just fine. Okay, so I think we need to move on here. Any questions on what we've covered up to this point? So hopefully you guys are all following along and you're able to see well and everything else. So now I'm going to teach you, especially for Babylock and Brother owners, it's really important when you take your machine apart that you put it back together in the proper way. Okay. And again, otherwise you're going to get really mad at me. I told you to take your needle plates off. I told you to take your bobbin cases out. And then all of a sudden you try to use your machine and it doesn't work. So I want to make sure that you put it back together properly when you're doing all of this wonderful routine maintenance we just taught you. Okay. It's really important that you put your needle plate on first. Okay. So needle plate goes on first. We're going to put that onto our, in between our feed dogs there. And we're actually going to take the screws and we're going to tighten those down. And the reason is because the needle plate actually holds the bobbin case in place where it's supposed to go. if we put the bobbin case in first, and then we put the needle plate over the bobbin case, it tends to shift it out of place. And then all of a sudden, you're going to take a couple of stitches and it looks like you got 8 spools of thread underneath your fabric. Again, that means that that thread can't get through here, and we've got huge problems. And you'll be really angry with me for telling you to take that machine apart. So I'm going to actually tighten these screws down. And now, once we get the needle plate on, we can only put our bobbin case in one way. So we're going to put the bobbin case now with the felt piece away from us. And again, also, if you can see this, I hope you can see this, there's a white dot on the interior of your bobbin area here. And then there's a white arrow on your bobbin case itself. Those two need to align together. And then your bobbin case will just fit in there nice and easy. And you're going to see there's a little bit of play to that bobbin case when you have it in there correctly. So again,
the order of putting that back in, is that for all embroidery machines or just for Babylock and Brother?
Just Babylock and Brother that have this specific style to it, where we have the gray cover that can be snapped out. So again, you want to put the needle plate on first, bobbin case in next, and then you're going to snap your gray cover on. So most other machines have a large needle plate like the Solaris. Babylock has actually moved to that type of needle plate, where all we have now is a single little switch over here.
I love it.
Yes, that we can just pull towards us, and our whole needle plate, oh, I had my presser put up, our whole needle plate just releases like so. So again, on this instance, we have to put the bobbin case in first, and then we're going to be able to physically snap our needle plate back down in place. But it makes it so much easier. No screws. It's awesome. So one of my favorite features on the Solaris, and there are so many. So again, you're just going to pull back on this. It'll snap that needle plate off. Solaris owners have absolutely no excuse for keeping your machines clean. So it's way too easy for you to get that needle plate off of there. All right, so we're all good with putting that machine back together. Again, just make sure you're doing it in that order, and you should never have a problem. Because if you get the needle plate on first, the bobbin case can only go in one way. So that's the good part of that. Okay. So we talked at the very end there about the needle plate being the most ignored part of sewing. Next, I'm going to talk about the most misunderstood part of sewing, and that's our tensions. Okay. And again, it is by far the #1 complaint we get from people who bring their machines in for service. My tensions are off. Okay. I'm having tension problems. If you get nothing else out of this class, what I want you to understand about tensions is 90% of the time, tensions are actually a symptom rather than an actual problem. Okay. So the tensions, just because you have bad tensions does not mean your tensions are off. Everything can throw tensions off. If you're using the wrong size needle, uh-oh, Kate, I need a power. If you're using the wrong size needle for the project that you're sewing on, if you're, hold please, I need to get us some power here. If your hook to needle timing is off a little bit, it can throw your tensions off. If you're using old thread, it can throw your tensions off. So again, just because you have tension problems does not mean that your tensions are the problem, okay? Everything can give you tension issues. And that's why it is by far the most significant problem that people bring their machines in for. Okay, so saying all of that, we're going to talk a lot about tensions here and how to how to adjust tensions, and how to decipher what's wrong with your tensions if you do have tension problems. Okay. Again, you've heard a lot of people probably teach that you can never, ever, 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 ever adjust your bobbin tension. Again, I'm one of those who believes that you shouldn't be afraid of your sewing machine. So my rule is you can never, ever, ever, ever touch your bobbin tension unless you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, then yes, it's perfectly acceptable, because certain things can happen to your bobbin tension that will cause it to go out. Okay. So, but most of those are easily correctable without ever adjusting your bobbin tension. Okay. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. In order to understand this, though, it's important that we understand. I hope everybody out there has a good idea, or has an idea of what good tensions look like. Okay. Because again, we're going to have a little quiz here. And this time I hope Kate gets it right. But I'm going to go through, and again, this isn't from Webster's dictionary, but I'm just going to talk about what good tensions are and what bad tensions are. Okay. And then we're going to have a little quiz. So, what good tensions are? Let's pretend that we have a red spool of thread in our upper thread, and we have a blue spool of thread in our bobbin thread. Okay. And we do a regular straight stitch, and you look at the top of your fabric, and you're going to see a knot of the blue bobbin thread on the top of your fabric. You flip your fabric over, and you're going to see an identical knot of red upper thread on the bottom of your fabric. When those two knots are absolutely identical, that's perfect tensions. That means that your stitch is meeting right in the middle of your fabric. Okay. So now here comes our quiz. Let's say we have that, again, the blue upper thread. No, did I have blue or red? Yeah, I have blue upper thread. So I have blue upper thread and I have red bobbin thread. And I look at the top of my fabric and I see a great big knot of my red bobbin thread on the top of my fabric. And then I turn the fabric over and I don't see any of my blue upper thread on the bottom of my fabric. In everybody's, Kate, in your opinion, what's wrong with those tensions?
I
wasn't paying attention.
I was working.
That's all right. That's good. So I'm just going to answer for her again. So, and I'm getting some answers here. And it says top is too tight. Top is too tight. Top is too tight. That's a perfect answer. However, there's a second answer there.
The bobbin is too loose.
That's right. So anytime we have tension problems, there's two possible solutions to every tension problem. So in this instance, either the top is too tight or the bobbin tension is too loose. Okay. So again, then we'll go to our other example here. Say you're sewing and you've got the blue upper thread and the red bobbin thread, and we look on the top of our fabric, we don't see any of our red bobbin thread on the top, but we see a great big knot of blue bobbin thread on the bottom. Again, those tensions, either the bottom is too tight or the upper thread is too loose. Okay. And the way it sort of entered my thick skull back when I was learning this is that bobbin tension in that instance is dominating the stitch. It's pulling everything to the underside. There's sometimes that we do this intentionally. Whenever we're doing embroidery, again, on the older machines, what was the first thing that they had us do when we did a buttonhole? They had us lower our tension down to a 3 instead of keeping it at its normal between 4 and 5, because we wanted those threads, the bobbin threads, to dominate the stitch and pull to the underside. Okay. So again, every possible tension problem has two potential solutions. Okay. So next part of this is every machine is an individual. Okay. So it's impossible just because one of you owns a Babylock, another owns a Brother, another owns a Foff. It's going to be those machines all act differently with different types of threads and different types of in other words, the tensions are going to be different. It's really hard for me or for you to be able to diagnose your tensions unless you know what your machine sews like when it's sewing really, really well. Okay, so again, I want you guys to do a homework project for me. When you're actually sewing along and you get done with that project and your tensions look perfect, they look absolutely beautiful. I want you to test both your upper tension and your bobbin tension to see what they feel like. So in the future, all of a sudden you're sewing along and you're all of a sudden getting big knots of thread on the of your bobbin thread pulled to the top of your fabric. If you have no idea what your machine feels like when it's sewing well, you're going to have no idea what to look for when it's sewing poorly. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope I explained that well. But again, I want you guys to get an idea of what your machine feels like when it's sewing well. That way, down the road, when it's having problems, and Lorraine, I'm going to show you what I mean by feel, or what I'm talking about by feel, because there's a way to test your bobbin tension and your upper tension that we're going to cover right now, actually. So that's correct. If you know what's normal, you know what to look for when it's abnormal or when you're having problems. So saying that, again, when you get done with that project, you look at it, you say, this is exactly how my tension should feel. I want you to, for your bobbin tension, I'm going to flip my little camera around here again. For our bobbin tension, I want you to, I'm going to actually, we're going to test this really quick so you guys can see what I mean. We need a bobbin. We need our threads for Babylock and Brother owners. You need to make sure that your needle plate is in place, that your cover is on, because everything in that mechanism affects how the tensions are. Okay, so you want to just put that bobbin in. You want to make sure that your needle plate's on. You want to make sure that your cover's on. And all we're going to do is turn our hand wheel once towards us. And you can see a little tip of our bobbin thread came up through our needle plates. And so all I'm going to do is grab a hold of that bobbin thread, and I'm going to give short little tugs to the back so I can feel how that feels when it's sewing well. Okay. And again, you're going to feel a little bit of resistance on that thread. Okay. So again, that way down the road, all of a sudden we are sewing along, and again, you're seeing a whole bunch of thread pulling up to the top of your bobbin thread pull up to the top. You take that thread out, you pull on it, and you say, wait a second, that's way more loose than my bobbin tension normally feels. Something has to be wrong there. Okay. But again, if you don't have that point of reference, you're not going to know what to look for when you do have problems. Okay, so now I'm going to show you something else on your bobbin tension, because this is something that happens quite frequently. Your bobbin tension, I'm going to take my bobbin case out here, and I'm going to try to explain this to you real quick. So the bobbin tension has a spring that actually, it's a clamp system. So it has a little spring. When you put your bobbin thread, and I'm having trouble seeing here, so I'm hoping, I've got my needle here, and I'm going to show you, that's my little pointer. There's a little spring on the inside, or excuse me, when you put your thread back through this opening here, and that spring is what's putting pressure on that bobbin thread. Okay. So the first thing when I have that problem where that bobbin thread is pulling to the top, the first thing I'm going to look for is, do I have any debris inside of this spring? And I'm just going to take an old needle and I'm going to try to scrape that spring. Okay. If I scrape that spring, and even a little tiny bit of lint will prevent that clamp from happening properly. Okay. So again, even if you get a tiny itty bitty piece of lint in there, it's going to affect how those tensions look. Okay. So, so again, back to when can we adjust our bobbin tension? If you know what your bobbin tension is supposed to feel like when it's sewing well, And then you go through and you check to see if there's any debris inside of that bobbin tension, if you feel like it's looser than it normally is. And then there's no debris and you're still having problems. Then you have my permission to actually adjust that bobbin tension screw. Okay. And the bobbin tension screw, again, on the Babylock and Brother machines, has a little green dot of paint on it. There's one screw, that's the tension adjustment screw. There's another screw, this little Phillips head, that you can never, ever, 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 ever touch. Okay. So the flathead screw on this, again, that spring is heavily loaded, meaning that there's a ton of pressure on the screw, and a little bit of a torque or a little bit of an adjustment makes a huge difference. So when I'm adjusting bobbin tension, I'm turning this literally 1 or 2 o'clock at a time. If right now we're at 9 and 3, I'll move it to 10 and 4, if that makes sense to everybody. So, and it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So as you're adjusting that screw, you're going to turn it to the right to tighten your tension. You're going to turn it to the left to loosen the tension. That green dot of paint, by the way, is Loctite. So it's actually a sealant, and that's why it's very, very, very rare that you ever have to adjust your bobbin tension, actual tensions. Okay, most of the time when you're having bobbin problems, it's because you have debris that's stuck in that little spring on the inside here. Okay, and again, it's as simple as rubbing an old needle on the inside and trying to get that debris out of that tension spring. Okay, I hope everybody's following me on that. Again, that's
could you floss it?
It's really not going to do any good to floss it, Lynn, because that thread tends to be too flimsy to get that debris out from that spring. I was telling you that spring is very, very tight on that thread, and just putting some thread in there doesn't normally remove it. Normally you need a metal object to physically remove that whatever is impeding those tensions from happening. Okay.
Are you talking about bobbin cases today or not?
Talking about what kind of bobbin cases?
The difference between the
yeah. How are we doing on time?
It is 22.
20 to noon?
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
We're probably going to go over, ladies. So yeah, let's talk about the difference in bobbin cases. So again, the bobbin case I showed you with the green dot of paint on the bottom of it, or on the side of it, is your regular sewing bobbin case. Okay. I heard somebody say this earlier. I almost started chuckling. I am a huge fan of that saying. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. So my advice to you on your bobbin cases is I don't want you to confuse yourselves. Okay. If you're sewing, and even in embroidery, your everything is working fine. You're not seeing any of your bobbin thread pull to the top. You have really nice tensions. Keep using your regular sewing bobbin case that we have here. Kate, do you have a purple bobbin case in any of your stuff here? Mm-hmm. Okay, so but Babylock also, for embroidery owners, have a second bobbin case in their repertoire that is specifically made for embroidery. So why is it made for embroidery? Because just like we were saying, they put extra pressure on the tension. So this bobbin case that has the purple dot on it is actually made for embroidery. Okay, for again, on Brother and Babylock machines. We have the green paint that's regular sewing. We have the purple that's made for embroidery. Okay, but again, the only time I want you to use this bobbin case is when it's broke. What I mean by that is when you're doing embroidery, and then let's say you're doing really, really fine lettering where it's really tiny lettering. Again, that puts a lot of pressure on our upper thread. Okay, and again, what we've learned about tensions is when we have pressure on the upper thread, it's going to dominate the stitch. So it's going to pull everything to the top. I'm going to switch back here. So you guys, I'm talking with my hands and you guys can't see that. So I figured I better move around so you can see what I'm saying. So again, if you're doing really tiny letters, it's putting a lot of pressure on your upper thread, and that's going to make that tension tighter. So it's going to tend to pull everything towards the top. So our green bobbin case won't be as effective as our purple bobbin case. Okay, so by putting in the purple bobbin case, it's going to alleviate that problem, and you're going to be able to sew those tiny little letters really effectively, and everything's still going to pull to the underside like you want it to, and you won't see any of the bobbin thread on the top. Okay, so again, there is a purpose for that embroidery bobbin case. Gosh. Okay, sorry about that. So there is a purpose for that embroidery bobbin case. However, saying all of that, I want you to use the green bobbin case as often as you can, because when you switch to regular sewing, if any of you do regular sewing on your Solaris or your Destiny or whatever machine you have, and you have the purple bobbin case in there, it's definitely going to be broke, because there's going to be way too much tension for regular sewing on this embroidery bobbin case. Okay, so you have to be careful, and you have to know what bobbin case you have in there. That's why just make your life easier and use the green bobbin case until you have stitching problems, and know that you have this embroidery bobbin case there to correct those stitching problems. Okay, I hope that makes sense to everybody.
A couple of questions. Someone's asking that they were told that the purple one was if you were using pre-wound bobbins.
Purple one, actually, no. The purple one, pre-wound bobbins actually have a coating on them that holds that bobbin together. So the pre-wound bobbins actually have extra tension built into them that if you combine that with your embroidery bobbin, okay, you're actually double dipping there, so to speak. So you actually have so much pressure on that bobbin thread that you're going to tend to have more puckering on your fabrics than if you're using pre-wounds. Again, I will say 99% of the time, your regular bobbin case is going to work tremendously with pre-wound bobbins, even in embroidery. Okay, what you tend to have happen if you're using pre-wound bobbins when you're doing regular sewing is that bobbin, because it has that coating on that bobbin case, or excuse me, that coating on that bobbin to hold it all together, the tensions tend to be a little tighter when you're using them in regular sewing, believe it or not. So again, just keep that in mind. Green bobbin case pretty much for everything, until you start to have problems. If you're winding your own bobbins, it actually is going to be more frequent that you're going to need the embroidery bobbin case, because there's not as much pressure on that bobbin without that coating that's holding everything together.
So Patrick, I believe that Cheryl from Northern California has probably been taking her machine apart with us today. And she's saying that now on her screen, she has a message that says there is no plate cover, even after she has put the plate back on.
Okay.
Does she need a trip to Colorado?
So let me show her. First of all, there is a sensor on our, I'm going to switch us back around here. So there is a tiny little sensor here for our needle plate cover that I'm not sure if you can. Okay, if you can see it right here, but there's a little trigger switch on this little metal piece here that when you put your needle plate cover on, you want to make sure it's snapped into place, so that trigger switch on the front here is going to be engaged. So it's right in between this. I'm hoping you have like a Unity style machine like this, but that trigger piece needs to be moved into place. So just make sure that you're completely snapped into place there, and it should go away. So I'm hoping that that helped you. I hope you didn't move that sensor out of place when you were trying to play around in there, but it's really hard to reach that, so it would be really difficult for you to do that on your own.
Okay, we have another question. On the Floriani website, they state that the QS pre-wound bobbins can be used again after emptied. Would you recommend that we do not do that with the QS ones versus other pre-wound?
You know, again, when they're doing pre-wound bobbins, they are using the cheapest plastic possible to wind those bobbins. Let me assure you, even Quilters Select. So they're to me, they're made to be used once, and I would throw them away. The color difference, I've tried to wind bobbins onto pre-wounds after they're gone, and again, those bobbins will warp really, really easy. So no, I'm not a big fan of using pre-wound bobbins over again. I would prefer you just threw them away and you bought regular. Again, our Babylock bobbins have a really nice blue tint to them. They're made of a really strong plastic, and it's really hard to warp those bobbins. So I know Floriani preaches that. I'm not a big fan of it. You can if you want to, but again, just know that if you do that, you'll have a tendency to warp that bobbin. I haven't seen one yet that doesn't have that tendency. So I hope that answered that question.
Okay.
And I better get moving along here, or we're going to be here forever. So
yeah, because I'm not ready for life.
I know. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go up to our upper tension now. We talked a lot about our bobbin tension. Again, this is the one fun part we do today. And I actually did this for our Babylock Club.
Do you want me to hold the camera?
I'm sure if you want to. So we talked about when the bobbin thread's pulling to the top. So now let's talk about the problem when we have the situation where the bobbin tension, when you take like one or two stitches, oh, you got my finger, sorry. Oh, you know what, I can do this, Kate, I'll be fine.
You sure?
Yeah, so let's talk about the situation where we take one stitch or one or two stitches, and it looks like we have like 3 spools of thread underneath our fabric, where we get that huge bird's nesting problem. Okay, that's a drastic example of our bobbin tension completely dominating the stitch. Okay, it looks like the worst problem in the world, and you have to throw your machine away. However, it's a really, really simple problem for you guys to take care of on your own. Okay, so again, your tension assemblies on the Babylock and Brother machines are underneath one single cover that has a single screw to it. So, and it's got a little vanity cover over the top of it. So you can see it has a little plastic cover. You can just use my pointer and we can actually get in there and take that vanity cover off. And then we can take that single screw out. Oops. And voila, what's going to happen is it's going to expose our entire tension assembly there. Okay, so now this is kind of cool. I want to show you guys this. This is how our automatic tensions work. When you dial into a different stitch, Kate, you managed to get this dirty up here. That's right, it's all right. So when you dial into a stitch, this little black roller is going to move backwards or forwards to adjust the tensions to that specific stitch. That's sort of how that automatic tension works. But anyway, the way our tension works on this is, again, it's a true clamp system. You can see when our presser foot is up, our tension disc is wide open, so we can put that thread through nice and easy. That's why it's important that you always thread your machine with the presser foot up. When we lower our presser foot, we're going to lower our presser foot here, and it's going to seal that clamp. Okay, so that's what's putting the pressure on our thread for our upper tension. So we open it and it opens, we lower the presser foot and it closes. So saying that, if that clamp doesn't seal around that thread properly, that means that we're going to get the ultimate example of the bobbin thread dominating the stitch. There's going to be nothing on our upper tension because that clamp can't seal because we've got some debris or we've got the thread not in there properly. And we're going to get a whole bird's nest problem on the bottom of our fabric. Okay, so again, by taking that one screw out, taking our cover off, we can then get in with tweezers and we can physically remove whatever obstruction is inside of that tension assembly. And it's a miracle cure. All of a sudden, our tensions are working again and we can keep on sewing. Okay, so again, that's what I wanted to show you on that upper tension. Again, I will never in this class in a million years teach you guys something that I don't think that you can handle. This cover comes off really easy and it goes back on really easy. Okay, so all we're going to do to put it back on, you can see there's a little tab over on the side here that sort of fits into place. And once it fits into place, you're just going to, I even did it one-handed. You're just going to tighten that screw down. Maybe. I can't do that one-handed. I might have you hold that. It's wiggly. And you're just going to tighten that screw down. The back cover is going to be sort of parallel with the back side here, and life is good. Okay, so again, it's a miracle cure. You're back to sewing, and you don't even need to bring the machine into the service center. Woohoo! All right, so do we have any questions on tensions now, upper or lower? Oh, one other thing I wanted to show you here. We taught you how to test bobbin tension. Again, you're just going to pull that thread up through the needle plate and pull back a little bit. The way to test upper tension is with our presser foot up. You can see it's really easy for me to pull my thread through the needle. When I lower my presser foot, that thread is no longer going to pull without pulling that needle. That means that everything is working properly and everything is good. So again, if you get that big bird's nest problem and you want to test whether or not you're inside of that thread properly, all you have to do is thread your needle with the presser foot up. It'll pull firmly. When you lower your presser foot, it'll stop pulling. That means that everything is good with your upper tension and you can keep sewing. All right. We're almost done, I promise. So remember at the beginning, I told you, it shows you how sad my life is, but I've sort of become an expert on needles throughout the years. And so that's what I want to talk about next, because needles are probably the most ignored and misunderstood part of the sewing process. And I want to try to give you my 2 cents on how to choose your needles and how to have good sewing results based on needles. Okay. I've already told you this once. You're going to hear me say it about 1,000 times before the end of this. Not 1,000, but I exaggerate a lot. My philosophy on needles is the same as what I was just telling you before with bobbin cases and actually with life in general. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. So just because you're doing quilting does not mean you absolutely have to have a quilting needle in there. Okay, all needles will do well with quilting. Okay, embroidery is the same way. Just because you're doing embroidery doesn't mean you absolutely have to have an embroidery needle on there. You could have a universal needle on there and you still have good results. So if it ain't broke, you've got the right needle in there. You're fine. However, if it is broke, it needs to be the first thing that you look at in order to fix your problem. When you're troubleshooting your machine, the needle is the first thing to be taken out, thrown away. And then what I want you to do is take advantage of the technology that's out there. When I first started in this industry a long time ago, there was basically 5 needle choices. Now we're up to 14 and counting. I mean, it's even gone beyond 14. So again, there's that technology is more than doubled in the 26 years that I've been doing this. And each of the needles has a specific purpose to make your sewing life easier, and you might as well take advantage of it. So I'm going to talk to you about some different needle types, and then I'm going to talk to you about size and things of that nature. So needle types, let's start with the quilting needle. We talked about that a little bit earlier. The characteristics of a quilting needle is it has a really, first of all, it's really, really strong. So it's made out of a really strong material. It also has a really long scarf cut out to it. Why? Because a quilting needle is specifically made for free motion quilting. So when we're doing free motion quilting, we have absolutely no idea when the needle is down in our fabric or when it's up out of our fabric. Okay, so saying that, you need a needle that's super strong and is going to hold as you're trying to move. And if you happen to move the fabric when the needle's still down, it's not going to bend as much. Okay, it also has that really long scarf cut out because, again, we're free motion quilting. So we're doing 2 layers of cotton and we're doing a layer of batting. So when your needle goes down through that fabric, it needs a really long place for that thread to lie so that hook can come around and pick it up cleanly and pull it around. Okay. Embroidery needles, they're made out of a heat resistant material because, again, in the characteristics of embroidery is you're taking a lot of stitches. You're doing a lot of stitching in a short amount of time. You're also going through multiple layers of threads, multiple layers of fabric, stabilizer, and you guys have seen some of your embroidery projects. So again, the embroidery needles have a heat resistant material on the outside of them that'll prevent that fraying from happening too often. So again, that technology is wonderful technology specifically made for embroidery. It doesn't mean you have to have an embroidery needle in order to do embroidery though. Okay. My favorite all-time needle is the stretch needle. A stretch needle is a ballpoint needle that has a Teflon coating on it. What the stretch needle does is because it's got that Teflon coating on it, it's going to, if you're sewing on any fabric, what it's made for is fabric that's porous. It's stretch material and knits and thing that has a lot of a give to it. Again, what happens with stretchy material is the fabric can't do its job. We've already learned that what the fabric's supposed to do is when that needle goes down through the fabric's job is to put pressure on the thread and push it up against the side of the needle. Stretch material, the light knits and things aren't capable of doing that because they're too porous. And so what happens is you get what they call stitch deflection. The thread lays off to the side of the needle. So when your hook comes around, it can't pick that needle up and you get skip stitches. Okay. So again, what they did is they came out with a Teflon coated needle that gets in and out of the fibers of the knit fabrics. And it's going to allow the fabric to do its job and put that pressure on the thread. And then the hook can come around. I literally have solved so many problems just by recommending the stretch needle. In fact, if I put a stretch needle in when you bring it in for service and it's still skipping stitches, I know we've got a pretty significant timing issue. So again, the stretch needle is my favorite, but it has some ulterior benefits to it. If you're sewing on any fabric with any sizing, with any like denim or like upholstery, anything that has a coating on it, again, because of that Teflon, it gets in and out of those fibers and it'll immediately prevent any type of, not prevent, but it'll help eliminate any skip stitch problems or anything that you're having like that. Talk about universal needles. They are the one needle that's made with the cheapest material possible. What a universal needle is, back in the day, a universal needle was either a denim needle or a ballpoint needle. So they came out with what they called a modified ballpoint. And the modified ballpoint is a mixture of those two. So it's got sort of a sharp point, but not really. So it's going to work on anything from silk to cotton to denim, all different types of fabrics. Okay. Again, it's made out of a very cheap material, so it's going to dull quicker, and you're going to need to change it more, but it's much more cost effective. So you might ask why you just don't use a stretch needle for everything. Again, you got to keep in mind that a stretch needle is a ballpoint needle. So again, if you're trying to do it through that upholstery fabric, it's going to dull really rapidly, and you're going to go through those needles pretty quickly. So metallics, again, metallic needles are made, or metafill needles are made from metallic threads. The benefits to a metallic needle or metafill needle is it's got a really deep scarf cut out to it. And again, it's got a really large eye. It's made for those metallic fiber threads. Those are just metal fibers wrapped together. If your hook comes around and touches any part of that thread, it's going to unravel that thread immediately, and it's going to be broke. So you're not going to be able to sew with metallic threads without using a metafill needle. Okay, so it's going to be broke. You're going to have to fix that problem before you have good results with it. So the needle that, say you're out of metafill needles and you want to sew with metallic threads, the one needle that you're able to use is a top stitch needle, because it has the very same characteristics that the metafill does. Really deep scarf cutout, really large eye. So again, it will do really well. If you happen to be in a crunch and you want to sew with metallic threads, that top stitch needle is going to be an awesome solution for you. So, so that's any questions on any needle types that I didn't cover. That's just sort of a, again, keep in mind, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, if it starts to give you problems, your stitching starts to give you problems, it needs to be the first thing that you look at when you're trying to troubleshoot your problems.
And somebody asked about the 12-weight threads.
Yes.
So absolutely a top stitching needle that has the larger eye to allow that heavier thread to pass through.
That's correct, or just any larger size needle. Let's talk about size since we brought that up. So again, they make it very confusing for us, of course, because they have two sizes of needles on there, and everybody gets really confused about what the sizes mean. So one of them is an American measurement. And because one is the European measurement. And because we have to do everything a little bit differently in America, there's an American measurement on there also. The bigger number, the size 70, 10. The 70 is the European measurement. The 10 is the American measurement. Okay, 75, 11, 80, 12. What it's measuring is two things. It's measuring the eye of the needle, but it's more importantly, as we learned earlier, it's measuring the scarf cutout in the back of the needle. So the bigger the number, the bigger the scarf. And that's going to accommodate a heavier thread or a heavier fabric, because it also has a bigger eye to it. Okay, so again, just pick a size that you're comfortable with and go with that one. If you're more comfortable with that Singer American measurement, you'll ask for a size 12 needle, for instance. If you want to, I've always been trained by Europeans, so I'm always quoting European sizes, which would be the size 80 in that instance. So again, bigger the number, the bigger the scarf cutout is to accommodate larger threads. Okay.
They're suggesting that we do just a separate class all on needles.
That could be. You're right.
Titanium needles, microtex needles.
Yes.
We could go on for.
We could.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of titanium needles, by the way, on the Babylock and Brother machines, because I found over the years that they cause more problems than they solve. People tend to use them too long, first of all. They are made out of a titanium material. I don't know if anybody's ever broke a titanium needle before, but it doesn't break, it shatters. It like dissolves. And it, again, I've taken out a titanium needle and put in a regular embroidery needle and solved a lot of people's issues. We do sell them. So again, I don't want you to think it does have a place. It will last about 5 times longer than your normal needle. I'm a huge fan of the chrome needles by Floriani. That's my favorite needle. It has a chrome coating on it, so it'll last a lot longer. And that's my favorite needle type. It's made by Schmetz, which is my favorite needle company. So, all right, let's talk about threads really quick here, and then we're going to get to our 2 handouts that I'll go through really, really quickly. So threads, because they really want to confuse us, they're exactly opposite from the needles. So the bigger the number on the thread, the smaller the thread. So if you get a size 80 weight thread, it's a really thin thread. A 50 weight is your normal everyday sewing thread. 40 weight is your normal everyday embroidery thread. Again, it's thicker than that 50 weight because you want better coverage on your embroidery. Okay, so again, just make sure if you're sewing with a 12 weight thread, you want to make sure, like extremes like that, where you got a 12 weight thread, which is really, really heavy, you want to make sure you accommodate the needle size with that, so you'll have a nice stitch. If you try to sew a 12 weight thread with a size 70 needle, it's going to be broke. You're going to have stitch problems. It's just not going to be able to accommodate that much thickness in that scarf cutout. So again, that's the first thing you need to look at is needle choice, and take advantage of the technology that you have out there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to cover the handouts fairly quickly here. One of them, it's more sentimental to me than anything, but the 7 requirements for a happy sewing machine. This was what I used to teach that class for many, many years. I taught this class based on this outline, and I just can't seem to get rid of it. So a lot of it is repeat. So I'm going to just go through it really, really quickly here. Number 1, again, the 7 requirements for a happy sewing machine: change needles frequently. Everybody likes a rule. My rule is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. So again, I put in something every 2 to 3 projects. It honestly depends on what you're sewing. If you're sewing through denim or leather, or you're sewing with a stretch needle through an upholstery fabric, you're going to need to change your needles more often than if you're sewing through a silk and just doing a regular straight stitch through it. So again, your machine is going to let you know when it's time to change your needle. When it starts breaking and shredding, it needs to be the first thing you look at. Correct needle for the project you are sewing. We just talked about that. Again, that's more important on extremes. So if you're sewing with a really thick thread, you want to make sure that you accommodate that with a larger needle. Number 3, never, ever, never, ever, 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 ever sew over pins. And I say that lightly. So again, the analogy I like to make is it's like driving down the same road every day. The first day you you have a big pothole in the middle of the road. First day you hit the pothole, no big deal. You keep on driving, life is good. The second day you hit the pothole, all of a sudden you're veering off to the right. The third time you hit the pothole, you need a new front end alignment. It's the same way with sewing over pins. First time you hit a pin, no big deal. You pick the pin out of your face and life is okay. Second time you hit a pin, all of a sudden you're skipping stitches in zigzag. The third time you hit a pin, you need to bring your machine in for $150 service. So again, I'm not going to teach you guys how to sew, but pinning horizontally rather than vertically, so you have that as an edge guide. Or again, just making sure you stop before the pins and pulling them out. Just don't sew over pins. Your machine's not made to go over that, and it's just going to cause you more problems than it's worth. We've already talked about number 4, don't pull and tug to get your fabric to feed through. Let your machine do the feeding. Again, just it's going to help with your needles. So just make sure that you do that. Top quality thread. Now, I'm not telling you to go home and throw away all of your Coats and Clark. Okay, I know that's the most popular thread out there. The threads that we're recommending here are just proven to me. Coats and Clark is going to make its way back on the list. They've changed the way they wind. The older spools of Coats and Clark have those huge ridges on the top of them. And again, I just want to make sure if you're using those that you're being careful with them, because they do tend to cause stitch problems.
Can I just address something there?
Uh-huh.
Are the threads that you have listed on there, I have not seen your sheet, but are the threads that you have listed on there primarily sewing threads and not necessarily embroidery threads?
That is correct. And this hasn't been updated in probably 30
someone
years.
Just commented that there was no Floriani.
Yeah, and that's right.
And I've addressed that, but I just wanted to make sure that was the case.
I am going to update this list. I did notice that. And it literally hasn't been updated in 20 years. So that's the reason for that. But again, on the embroidery side, we're huge fans of Isacord. We're huge fans of Floriani. So on the sewing side, we're huge fans of Metrazine, and we're huge fans of Gutermann. So that's again, Gutermann we don't sell, but it's a German thread. It's wound really, really well. Metrazine is what we've sold. Kate and I have sold that for 26 years now. So it's a really, really high quality Swiss thread. And my recommendation is invest in the thread that your budget can afford. You don't want to skimp. You don't want to spend $15,000 on a sewing machine and then buy 5 for $1 threads. The machines are much more precise now, and they're going to bring out the inequities of the thread if you don't have a nice high quality thread in there. So, and then again, if you sew on a regular basis, every year to year and a half, I would have your machine professionally cleaned.
Okay, a couple of quick questions.
Okay.
Class A needles, how do you feel about those?
Class A needles, they've actually changed their manufacturer. It is now an Oregon needle company, which has a huge benefit. Oregon needles are the needles that actually come with your Babylock and Brother machines. So they have made huge strides. I'm still more of a fan of the chrome, but we haven't had any problems with those Class A's, have we, Kate?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
I use Class A's primarily.
do you? Okay, yeah, and especially the new packaging of the Class A's. They've done a much better job on the materials that they're putting into the needles. They're still a little bit of a discount needle. They've raised the prices a little bit, but they've improved the quality a ton. So am I not correct on that?
You're correct.
Okay, okay, good.
Madeira, I'm presuming she's talking about Madeira thread. We carry quite a bit of Madeira thread, but we don't necessarily carry their embroidery thread anymore, but we do carry a lot of their 12 weight and their specialty threads. And Madeira is a very high grade of thread. It
is a very good thread, yes. And we carry the rayons too. That's the one rayon thread. Do we still have any of that?
No.
Oh, we don't, never mind. We stopped carrying all rayons just because it breaks a lot more than the poly threads. So I'm having flashbacks.
Some needles are color coded. Can you repeat the bigger the number on the thread? So the thread is the bigger the number, the heavier the thread.
No, the smaller the number.
Sorry. I'll let Patrick tell you that.
Yeah, so the smaller the number, the heavier the thread. So an 8-weight thread is an extremely heavy thread. A 12 weight, we lose a little bit of that. In fact, an 8-weight, you can't even put through your needle on a sewing machine. You have to sew on a serger with that. 12 weight is probably the first thread on the thread weights that you can put through your sewing machine. 50 weight is going to be a standard, normal, everyday thread. 80 weight is a really thin thread. So again, the bigger the number, the lighter the thread. Okay. All right, so our last handout is our troubleshooting techniques.
Can you answer the Serger needle question about 90 EL? I think I answered it, but I think I may have sent it privately to her. And I don't remember what the question was. Hang on, let me go back and look.
So the EL series needles, just to let you know, those are Serger-based needles that are made for the cover stitch machines. Okay, so if you have a machine that has a cover stitch to it, the EL series has a little groove on the right above the scarf cutout that allows the cover stitch to operate without skipping stitches. So again, the EL series needle,
I think it was what sizes do they come in?
Oh, okay, yeah. And the sizes on that one are size 90s and 80s, yes. So okay, so the troubleshooting techniques, that's the handout. Again, you're going to see all these handouts on our website, and you can print them off. There, I have a set routine of what I do when you bring a machine in for repair. And I have a pretty good track record of about 80 to 90% of being able to send people out within about 10 minutes with a fixed machine. And I figure if I can go through what I do, you can do this at home before you have to bring it in. And life is good. So my troubleshooting techniques, surprise, surprise, number one is change the needle. So again, that's the first thing you need to look for when you're having problems. Number two is change the spool of thread. And again, I don't care if you sewn 5 projects with that specific spool of thread. I want you to eliminate that as a potential problem. Thread does have a shelf life. So you can have thread for so long and it will start to go bad, and then all of a sudden you're breaking threads and it's no fun. So again, change the spool thread. Number 3, we talked about this already, test both the top and the bottom tensions. And again, we've already showed you how to test those tensions. So I'm going to make sure that our thread is in the upper tension disc. I'm going to make sure that the bobbin is in the bobbin tension and we don't have any debris that's causing any issues for us on that. Number 4 is clean and oil the machine. I understand if you've already done that, I eliminate that, but it's amazing, especially machines that need oil, what a drop of oil can make, a difference that it can make on your machine. Number 5 is change out the bobbin. And again, the other thing about the bobbins is I want you to make sure that your bobbins are wound really, really tight. Okay. And again, I've shown you all this many, many times, but when we're winding bobbins, almost did it again. When we're winding bobbins on our bobbin winding spring, I want you to wrap 2 times around that bobbin winding spring. And that's going to ensure when you go over to your bobbin winder, that's going to ensure that you actually wind a really nice tight bobbin and it's going to be nice and even. Okay. So again, change out your bobbin. Not a lot can go wrong with the bobbin because there's not a lot of pressure on that thread. So, again, that's down to number 5. Number 6, again, this is really, really important. And we talked about this quite a bit. When you're using your horizontal pin here, you want to make sure that you're using the correct size spool cover to completely cover the spool, but not too big where that thread has to come up over the top of that spool. Okay, so again, make sure you're using the right size spool cover, especially on the horizontal pins. While I'm on this subject, this is going to be the end of our class here, so I hope you guys were patient with me. I don't know, is it 2 o'clock yet? So, when we're on the subject of the horizontal pin, these horizontal pins were beautiful in their design in that they made a really streamlined machine, but they have some bad sides to them. And one of the bad sides is you can see that horizontal pin is really, really close to the tension assembly. So it means that you don't have a long time for that thread to sort of unwind and relax before it gets into the tension assembly. So if you're having trouble with like shredded threads and broken threads and things like that, and you've gone through all the troubleshooting techniques, one of the things I like to suggest is getting this spool of thread away from the tension assembly. And I want you to do that by using your 2 spool thread stands. And again, we sell this for most Babylock and Brother machines, but it's a 2 spool thread stand that has an antenna that comes off of it. Kate, would you put the one on the Solaris here? I'll show them really quick here. So you're getting that spool of thread further away from that tension assembly, so it sort of has time to unwind before it gets into the tension disc. So again, we've got a long way to go before we get down into the tension assembly, and it just will cause a lot less breakage problems and a lot less issues for you. Okay, so again, the 2 spool thread stand is highly recommended. If you don't have one, I would it would be a really good purchase for you. We also have a single one that fits behind the machine that I didn't bring today. I should have brought that one too. But so any other questions?
Just let them know that the 2 spool thread stand will not work on a Sophia, but there is a external spool stand that you can get to place behind the machine. We have had a couple of people want us to show them how to shop on our website for the items that you put up there.
Okay, we can do that. All right, I'm coming over to Kate here. There's Kate's loft.
Okay, so we're going to go to Above and Beyond Sewing. And the products that Patrick has put up, we've actually put it up underneath our Facebook Live products for the day. So if you go all the way down under, so you go to the tab that says products,
and then go down all the way to where it says Facebook Live products. And here you will find the little gem vacuum, the 2-spool thread stand, the vacuum attachments, the oil. You did a really good job. The blow off, and then you may or may not be seeing some fabric bundles on there too. Okay, so you click into the item that you're interested in. It's going to have the regular price and the sale price listed directly on there, and you can just add it to your cart. If you all of the information about the product, if there is any information, will be listed underneath the product there. So that is how you can shop our Facebook Live products and the products that we have put up for today's class.
Okay. Are we good?
I believe we are.
All right. With that, I think we're going to end the class. It went way over. I'm really sorry about that, but I talked way too much. So I thought today's class, because it wasn't hands-on, that it was going to go really short, but I think we're ready. You guys all good? Any other questions, or are we good?
I think we're good.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody. And we will talk to you at 2 o'clock, I think.
See you all later. Bye-bye.
And leave.
Leave or stop recording? Just leave?
Yeah, it'll stop it automatically. Oh, no, wait, we want end meeting. Where are we? End.